I am Absalom, son of David, and this is my story. The night my sister Tamar came to my house, she was wearing an ash-streaked robe torn down the front, her hands pressed over a face that no longer looked like a king's daughter. I remember the sound before I remember her face, a low, broken wailing that carried across the courtyard like something out of the grave. I ran to her. I did not yet know what had been done, only that the world had cracked somewhere I could not see. "Amnon," she whispered. Our brother, my father's firstborn. He had lured her into his chamber with a lie about being sick, and when the servants left them alone, he had forced himself on her and then thrown her into the street like refuse he was ashamed to be seen with. I said nothing that night. I gave her a room in my house, robes to replace the torn one, and I told her, "Be quiet now, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this to heart." I have turned those words over 10,000 times since. Be quiet. As if silence could be medicine. As if I were protecting her, when really I was closing a door on my own rage before it could burn down my house too soon. Because it was already burning. I could feel it under my ribs like coal. My father heard what happened. I watched his face when the news reached him. I watched the fury rise in his eyes, and then, strangely, go still. He was angry. Everyone said so. But he did nothing. No judgment. No punishment. Amnon walked the palace halls exactly as he had before, and my father let him. I did not understand it then. I understand it better now, though understanding did not save me from what I became. My father was a man who knew what it was to sin against a woman and be forgiven more mercy than he deserved. Bathsheba's name still sat in the shadows of his own history. Perhaps that is why his hand would not close into a fist against his son. A man who has been shown mercy sometimes forgets how to demand justice from someone else, even when justice is owed. I did not have that mercy in me. I only had the coal. 2 years. I let it burn for 2 years, and I told no one what I was building in the dark of my own heart. I laughed with Amnon at feasts. I sat beside him. I let him believe I had forgotten. That is the terrible discipline of hatred. How patient it can make you. How it will teach you to smile. When the sheep shearing season came, I invited all the king's sons to my land at Baal Hazor to celebrate with me, as was our custom. Feasting, music, the smell of roasting lamb fat curling up into the hills, wine passed hand to hand under torchlight. My father almost came himself. I begged him not to, careful, gentle. Let my brother Amnon go with us. And he asked why Amnon, and I gave him no true answer, only insistence until he let him go, suspecting nothing. I remember watching Amnon drink that night. I remember counting his cups. I remember the moment his eyes grew heavy and his laughter grew loose. And I remember lifting my hand toward my servants and giving the command that ended my brother's life. They fled. I fled. And in the silence after, kneeling in the dark with his blood already drying somewhere behind me, I did not feel triumph. I felt hollow, the way a jar feels when the water has all spilled out of it. I had thought justice would fill me. It only emptied me further. I ran to my mother's father, Talmai, king of Geshur, and stayed 3 years in exile, a guest in a foreign court, sleeping under a roof that was not my father's, eating bread that tasted of banishment, no matter how well it was made. Every day I asked myself the same question, turning it like a stone in my hand. Does my father love me still, or have I become to him what Amnon was to Tamar? a wound he refuses to look at. Joab, my father's general, was the one who finally moved heaven toward reconciliation, though not directly. Joab rarely did anything directly. He sent a wise woman of Tekoa to my father, disguised in mourning, telling a fabricated story of two sons, one dead and one condemned, until my father saw his own heart reflected back at him and agreed to let me return to Jerusalem. But return was not restoration. I lived 2 more years in my own city without ever seeing my father's face. 2 years close enough to smell the smoke from the palace kitchens and still be forbidden his presence. I do not think a farther exile could have hurt worse than that nearness without welcome. I sent for Joab twice, begging him to bring me before the king. He would not come. So I did the only thing an unheard man in a corner knows how to do. I made myself impossible to ignore. I told my servants to set his barley field on fire. It worked. Joab came raging to my house, and I told him plainly, "I sent for you. Why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me still to be there. If my father would not forgive me, let him kill me and be done with it. Better a clean death than this rotting half-life." Joab brought me at last before the king. I bowed my face to the ground before him, and my father, who had let his own anger cool for years without ever once sending for me, reached down and kissed me. I wish I could tell you that kiss healed what was broken in me. It did not. It came too late for the boy I had been, and by then something colder had already grown up in the space where trust used to live. I had learned, in those years of silence, that love from my father would only come to me through schemes, through fire, through force. So I began, slowly, patiently, the same patience I had once spent waiting to kill Amnon, to take by force what I no longer believed would be given freely. I bought chariots. I hired 50 men to run before me, and it did something to a man's chest, I confess, to watch a crowd part for him in the street. Every morning I rose early and stood at the gate where men came to bring their disputes before the king, and I told them, gently, sorrowfully, as though it grieved me, "See, your claims are good and right, but there is no man deputed by the king to hear you." And then the words I let sit like honey on my tongue. "Oh, that I were judge in the land." Then every man with a dispute or cause might come to me, and I would give him justice. I kissed every man who bowed to me. I stole their hearts one embrace at a time, and I told myself it was not treachery. It was only what I deserved, what should have been mine already. That is the lie pride tells you. It never says I am stealing. It says I am only taking back what is rightfully mine. 4 years I built this quietly, the way I once built my hatred for Amnon quietly. And then I asked my father's permission to go to Hebron under the pretense of fulfilling a vow. He blessed me and let me go. In Hebron, I sent secret messengers throughout the tribes of Israel. As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, say, "Absalom is king in Hebron." I remember the moment the trumpet sounded. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the men around me could hear it. This was the moment. Years of coal and silence and smiling through gritted teeth. And now it would finally be worth something. But I had not accounted for what it would feel like to hear that my own father had fled Jerusalem barefoot, weeping, his head covered, climbing the Mount of Olives with his loyal men around him because of me. I had wanted a crown. I had not truly imagined my father's face doing what it did the day David wept for Absalom, while Absalom was still very much alive and coming for his throne. I listened to counsel from Ahithophel, wise as the very word of God, men said, and I listened also to Hushai the Archite, who had stayed behind in Jerusalem, pretending loyalty to me while carrying my father's secrets back to him the whole time, though I did not know it yet. Ahithophel counseled me to strike my father immediately, while he was weary and unprepared. Hushai counseled me to wait, to gather all Israel first for a grand and certain victory. I chose Hushai's counsel. I did not know then that the Lord himself had determined to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel in order to bring disaster on me. I thought I was choosing wisdom. I was choosing my own ruin, and heaven had already written the ending before I ever opened my mouth to decide. There was a night on the palace roof. I will not linger long on it, only say that in claiming my father's concubines before all Israel, I believed I was declaring myself unquestionably king, sealing the breach between us beyond any hope of reconciliation. I did not know, or did not let myself know, that the prophet Nathan had spoken these very words over my father years before, as judgment for his sin against Uriah, that the sword would never depart his house, that evil would be raised up against him from within his own household. I was not merely rebelling. I was, without knowing it, the very sword God had promised. The battle came in the forest of Ephraim. I remember the trees more than I remember the fighting. The light coming down broken and green through the branches, the terrible thickness of undergrowth that devoured more of my father's 20,000 men that day than any blade did. My father had told his commanders, all three of them, within hearing of the whole army, "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." Even sending men to kill me, he could not stop loving me. I have thought of that more than anything else since. I was riding my mule beneath the thick branches of a great oak when my head caught fast in its boughs. The mule kept going. I did not. I hung there between heaven and earth, neither riding nor walking, neither dead nor free, and I remember, even now I remember, how strange it was to feel the whole of my ambition reduced to this: a man hanging by his own hair, unable to save himself, waiting. Joab found me. He did not deal gently. 3 javelins into my heart while I hung helpless in that tree, and 10 young armor-bearers around me finishing what he began. If I could speak once more to any living soul, I would not tell them of my chariots or my 50 runners or the sweetness of a crowd bowing low before me. I would tell them this: I spent my whole life trying to seize what love, unhurried and undemanded, would have given me freely in its own time. I let a wound become hatred, hatred become murder, murder become exile, exile become bitterness, and bitterness become a war against the very father who wept for me long before I ever drew a sword against him. Every stolen heart I gathered at that gate was never really mine to take. And in the end, all my scheming bought me nothing but a tree, a spear, and a father's cry that echoed through the gates of Jerusalem long after I was gone. "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would I had died instead of you, O Absalom, my son, my son." Let my story be a warning carried gently in your hand, not a wound to reopen. Do not let a hurt harden into hatred while you wait for someone else to make it right. Do not mistake a father's slowness for a father's absence. His love may still be walking toward you, even when it seems far off. And never trade the mercy that is patiently offered for the crown you are tempted to seize by force. The love you steal will never satisfy you the way the love you are given already would have. If you have been blessed by this story, subscribe, like, and share it with a friend.